there is a quiet conflict that takes place, not on battlefields, but in living rooms, offices, and over text messages. It's a war fought with subtle glances, carefully chosen words, and the slow erosion of your own sense of reality. Today, we explore a journey of recognition. This is not a story about monsters in the dark, but about the masks people wear in the light, and how to see what lies beneath without losing your own peace. Welcome. Imagine for a moment a person in your life. Perhaps it's a colleague whose approval you constantly seek, a friend whose drama always seems to eclipse your own, or a family member whose criticism is wrapped in the words, "I'm only saying this because I love you." Your interactions leave you feeling drained, confused, or somehow less than. You find yourself replaying conversations, questioning your reactions, and making excuses for their behavior. This isn't about everyday friction. This is a pattern, a slow drip of discomfort that has pooled into a quiet unease in your spirit. The ancient Stoics, philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, didn't just ponder the stars. They were supreme pragmatists of human nature. They understood that the greatest obstacle to a life of tranquility, a life of ataraxio, was not external chaos, but the toxic relationships we fail to recognize and navigate with wisdom. Our story begins with a principle. Perception is the root of action. How we see a person determines how we interact with them. If we see a wounding comment as tough love, we tolerate it. If we see constant chaos as passion, we get swept up in it. The first and most formidable mask worn by those who thrive on this quiet conflict is not one of overt malice, but of irresistible charm. This is our first sign, and it is the gateway. Let's call this person Alex. Alex isn't just likable, they are magnetic. When you first met, perhaps at a work function or through a mutual friend, they had an uncanny ability to focus entirely on you. They listened, or seemed to, with such intensity that you felt truly seen. Their laughter was generous, their stories captivating. They shared a vulnerable detail about themselves, which made you feel trusted, special. You left that first encounter feeling lighter, thinking, "What a remarkable person." This is the allure. The Stoics would call this the initial fantasia, the impression. But Epictetus, a Stoic who taught from a position of having been a slave, warned fiercely against assenting to first impressions. He urged a pause, a moment of logic before emotion. The charm is not the lie. It is often genuine in the moment. The deception is in its consistency and its purpose. As the weeks turn, the pattern beneath the charm begins to surface, like a shape emerging from fog. You notice that every group story somehow circles back to Alex's more incredible version. Your small victory at work is met with a brief "that's great" before they detail their own, more significant challenge. You start to feel a faint, inexplicable competition you never agreed to. Picture a shared project. Alex volunteers ideas with dazzling enthusiasm. In meetings, their energy is contagious. But when the hard, unglamorous work begins, they are suddenly beset by obstacles: a personal emergency, a misunderstanding of the timeline, a critique that the plan isn't perfect yet and needs more of their unique vision. The burden shifts. You pick up the slack, reasoning that their brilliant mind shouldn't be bogged down. Yet, when success arrives, Alex is at the forefront, gracefully accepting the glow of the accomplishment, their narrative already framing the struggle as their heroic effort. If you feel a sting of resentment, you brush it aside. After all, they're so talented, they mean well. I'm probably just being sensitive. This is where the Stoic practice of prosociatension becomes your most powerful tool. It is not about paranoid scrutiny, but about calm, detached observation. Watch not for evil, but for misalignment. Watch the space between word and deed, The charming person's words say, "We're a team." Their deeds say, "The team exists to elevate me." Observe their reaction to minor setbacks: a cancelled plan, a differing opinion. Does their graciousness hold, or does a flicker of irritation, a sharp-edged joke at someone else's expense, reveal itself? Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Apply this to your judgment. Delay your final assessment. Collect the data of action, not the melody of words. The true function of this superficial charm is to create a debt. It makes you feel grateful for their attention, fortunate for their presence. It builds a psychological credit line they will later draw from, often when you challenge them. When you finally say, "I felt overlooked in that meeting," the charm weaponizes into wounded confusion. "I'm shocked you'd say that. After everything I've done to support you." The ground beneath you softens. Your legitimate feeling is reframed as an betrayal of their kindness. You are no longer discussing an action. You are defending your character against the very person who made you feel special. This is the pivot point. The moment the mask slips. Just enough to show you the mechanism behind it. But understanding this sign is only the first step in a longer journey. Recognizing the charm as a potential strategy, not a guarantee of character, empowers you to step out of the spell. It allows you to replace awe with clear-eyed assessment. The Stoic goal is not to cynically distrust warmth, but to ensure your inner citadel, your core self, is not bribed by it. You can appreciate a sunset without believing it was painted just for you. Similarly, you can appreciate a person's charismatic energy without conflating it with their virtue. This discernment is the foundation. It is what prevents you from handing over the keys to your peace to someone simply because they know how to light up a room. As we peel back this first layer, a more unsettling question emerges. What lies beneath the charm when the audience isn't watching? What is the interior landscape of a person who relates to the world in this way? The next sign we must confront is far colder, and it strikes at the very heart of human connection. It is the absence of something fundamental, the inability to stand in another's shoes, to feel the echo of another's joy or pain. This is where our path turns deeper into the woods, and where our story continues. We left our exploration at the edge of a colder reality, looking beyond the warm glow of charm to ask what exists in its shadow. If the first sign is a skillful performance for an audience, the second sign reveals what is missing when the curtains close and the actor is alone. It is the absence of empathy, not a simple lack of sympathy, but a fundamental inability to genuinely connect with the internal world of another person. This is where the quiet conflict deepens, from confusion into a profound sense of isolation. Recall our subject, Alex. After the initial charm, you may find yourself sharing a personal struggle, a worry about your health, a grief, a deep-seated anxiety. You share it because the charming facade promised a safe harbor. But the response is where the emptiness reveals itself. It is not cruelty, not outright dismissal. It is a disconnect that feels like speaking into a void. Perhaps Alex offers a textbook-perfect, generic platitude before swiftly pivoting to a related story about themselves. "Oh, that reminds me of when your pain becomes a mere segue into their narrative." Alternatively, they might respond with a logical solution, delivered with the sterile precision of a technician diagnosing a faulty appliance, entirely missing the human heart of the issue. The message, felt rather than heard, is, your feeling is a problem to be solved or a topic to be diverted, not an experience to be shared. The Stoics, often misrepresented as unfeeling, placed sympathia, mutual interdependence of feeling, at the core of a virtuous life. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." He saw humanity as a single organism. A true lack of empathy, therefore, is a philosophical and spiritual rupture. It is a person operating as if they are the only bee in existence, indifferent to the health of the hive. When you are with them, you do not feel seen. You feel utilized. Your emotional experience is only relevant insofar as it affects them, entertains them, or can be used as a tool. Let's illustrate this with more subtlety. Imagine you achieve a long-sought goal, a promotion, publishing a piece of writing, mastering a difficult skill. You share your joy with Alex. The empathetic friend mirrors your light, their face reflecting your happiness, their congratulations feeling like a celebration. Alex's response, however, carries a faint, invisible weight. A pause, just a beat too long, a congratulations that trails into a comment like, "That's great. Wow, that company must really be desperate for new blood," or "Night. I always thought that was a pretty straightforward thing to do." The joy is not mirrored. It is subtly deflated, contaminated, or framed as a commentary on something else. You are left feeling oddly defensive about your own happiness, as if you've committed a social error by shining too brightly. This deficit extends to smaller, daily interactions. Watch how Alex interacts with service staff, with strangers, with anyone from whom they need nothing. Is there a basic courtesy, a recognition of shared humanity, or is there an impatience, a tone of command, an invisibility imposed upon the other? The Stoic practice here is to observe character in actions when no one is looking. But in this case, you are looking from the periphery. You are witnessing the unmasked self, the one not performing for your benefit. The person who is rude to a waiter is revealing a core belief about who deserves respect and who does not. That belief will, in time, be applied to you when you cease to be useful or compliant. The most chilling manifestation of this absence is not in anger, but in a serene, untroubled indifference to the consequences of their actions. They can deliver a devastating piece of gossip, shatter a confidence, or undermine a project. And when confronted, their demeanor is one of puzzled innocence. "I was just stating a fact," they might say. "Why are you so emotional? I didn't mean to cause a problem." And they believe it. They observe your distress not as a signal of harm they have caused, but as an irrational output from a faulty system. Your pain becomes your problem, a strange and inconvenient reaction they are now forced to manage. How does the Stoic navigate this bleak terrain? The imperative is twofold: recognition and boundary. First, you must see the absence for what it is, a fundamental limitation in the other person, not a reflection of your worth or the validity of your feelings. It is a blindness, not a judgment. Seneca advised, "We should not attach our sails to a ship that is doomed to sink." Recognizing the empathetic void allows you to stop expecting deep water from a dry well. You stop going to them for emotional sustenance, for validation, for shared joy. You redirect that need to your own inner citadel and to relationships that are capable of reciprocity. This is not an act of coldness, but of profound self-preservation. It is the application of the Stoic dichotomy of control. You cannot control another's capacity for empathy, but you can control your expectations and where you seek connection. You interact with Alex on the level they can operate, perhaps on shared tasks, on intellectual topics, but you consciously, wisely, wall off the vulnerable core of your emotional life. You share less. You protect more. You become a gracious but guarded host in your own psyche. But here lies the next inevitable escalation in the quiet conflict. A person who operates with charm and without empathy is not passive. Their world is a chat. When they encounter a boundary, when you stop feeding them with your reactions, your admiration, your emotional energy, they do not simply walk away. They begin to maneuver. They seek to regain control, to soften the boundary, to pull you back into their orbit, where you are a usable piece. This maneuvering has a name: manipulation. And it is the third sign, a more active and intricate layer of the mask. It is where the quiet conflict becomes a subtle game. And you must learn to see the board, not just the pieces. Manipulation is the natural evolution of charm without empathy. When the easy currency of charisma fails to secure compliance, and the inability to connect emotionally makes persuasion impossible, a third tool emerges from the shadows: the deliberate, strategic shaping of another's reality to serve one's own ends. This is not the crude coercion of a threat. It is the subtle art of making you choose what they want, while believing it was your idea all along. In our story, this is where Alex, confronted with your new, quieter detachment, begins to work in more intricate ways. The Stoic view of manipulation is rooted in its core dichotomy. Some things are within our control, our judgments, impulses, and actions, and some are not: the body, property, reputation, and the actions of others. The manipulator's entire craft is an invasive attempt to blur this line, to plant their own judgments in your mind and commandeer your impulses. Epictetus warned that we are not disturbed by events, but by the views we take of them. The manipulator becomes a sinister editor of those views. Let's name the techniques, not to breed paranoia, but to grant the clarity of recognition. The first is gaslighting, named for the old film where a husband dims the gaslights and denies it to make his wife doubt her sanity. In your world, it's more mundane but equally corrosive. You say, "You promised to handle the report." Alex replies, with serene confidence, "I never said that. You must have misunderstood. I said I'd think about the report." You recall the conversation vividly, but their certainty is absolute. The goal is not to win the argument about the report. It is to make you doubt the reliability of your own memory and perception. Once you question your own mind, you become reliant on theirs for the true version of events. The Stoic defense here is fierce adherence to your own prohairosauce, moral character, and faculty of judgment. You must say to yourself, "My perception is my own. I trust it." And you must act on that trust, even if you cannot prove it to them. The second technique is guilt-tripping. This is where the earlier charm and empathy deficit twist into a weapon. Alex fails to deliver on a commitment, causing you significant trouble. When you express frustration, the response is not an apology, but a wounded withdrawal. "I guess I just can't do anything right for you. After everything I'm going through, I thought you'd be more supportive." Suddenly, you are no longer the person who was let down. You are the persecutor of a suffering soul. Your legitimate grievance is buried under an avalanche of their often exaggerated or vague hardships. The Stoic Seneca wrote extensively on anger and the importance of assessing intent and harm fairly. Here, you must separate the issues: their struggles, which you may compassionately acknowledge, and their broken commitment, which you must fairly address. Do not allow the former to cancel the latter. A simple, unshaken statement like, "I am sorry you're struggling," and that doesn't change the impact of the missed deadline, holds the boundary. The third is strategic flattery and love bombing. After a period of tension or your successful enforcement of a boundary, Alex may return with overwhelming positivity, gifts, praise, declarations of your unique importance to them. This feels like a return to the golden beginning, and it is designed to trigger relief and addiction. Finally, the real Alex is back, you think, but this is often a tactical reset. A recalibration to pull you off guard and back into the former dynamic of debt and obligation. The Stoic is wary of any gift that seeks to purchase compliance. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to see things for what they are. Stripped of the story we coat them in. See the flattery not as redemption, but as a strategy. Accept thanks gracefully if you wish, but do not let it dissolve the lessons you learned and the boundaries you built. True change is demonstrated through consistent action over time, not through emotional fireworks. Finally, observe the use of triangulation and gossip. Alex may share a concern about you with a mutual friend, or make a slightly derogatory comment about you to a colleague, always framed as curiosity or care. "I'm just worried about her. She seems so sensitive lately." This accomplishes two things. It subtly poisons your other relationships, and it often circles back to you through the grapevine, making you feel watched and judged by the entire network. This is a power play to isolate you and make you more dependent on Alex for accurate social information. The Stoic practice of parrhesia frank, honest speech is the antidote. Go directly to the source. If you hear a rumor, calmly ask Alex about it. "I heard you told Mark I was struggling. Can we talk about what prompted that?" Their reaction, deflection, anger, or further fabrication will be more revealing than the gossip itself. Navigating this landscape requires the Stoic virtue of courage, not the courage of battle, but the courage of clarity. It is the courage to name the game without necessarily declaring it. You do not have to accuse Alex of being a manipulator. You simply have to cease being manipulable. This means becoming impenetrably predictable in your principles. When guilt is deployed, you acknowledge their feeling while calmly restating the original issue. When gaslighting occurs, you respectfully disengage from the debate about reality. I see we remember that differently. Moving forward, I'll need agreements in writing. You are not fighting their manipulation. You are systematically removing the levers they pull. This shift from a participant in the drama to a calm observer who changes the rules will trigger one of two responses. They may lose interest and seek easier prey, or they may escalate again, moving from manipulation to a more direct assertion of power. When subtle influence fails, the need for control becomes overt, demanding, and absolute. The quiet conflict is about to get louder as we approach the fourth sign. The insistence on domination, not through persuasion, but through possession. In the quiet conflict, there comes a point when the subtle arts of influence are abandoned for a more direct approach. When charm fails to captivate, empathy fails to forge a bond, and manipulation fails to bend your will. The next sign emerges with a stark clarity: the demand for control. This is no longer about guiding your perceptions or playing on your emotions. It is about dictating your reality, your choices, and your autonomy. The mask, now cracked and set aside, reveals a need for dominance that is raw and unapologetic. Recall that in our journey, we have seen Alex adapt and shift tactics. Now, faced with your stoic resolve, clear boundaries, and unwavering inner citadel, Alex's strategy hardens. The chess game becomes a siege. Controlling behavior is rooted in a fundamental belief that you are an extension of their will, a character in their story, a resource to be managed. The Stoic ideal of personal freedom and self-determination is the antithesis of this, which is why the controlling person must wage war against it. This control manifests in several domains. The first is the control of your time and attention. Alex may become insistent on knowing your schedule, questioning your whereabouts, or expressing hurt when you spend time with others. They frame it as deep care or investment in the relationship. "I just miss you when you're not around," or "I worry about you when I don't know what you're up to." But the subtext is a claim on your presence. Your time is not your own. It is a commodity they are entitled to. The Stoic practice of valuing your own time and purpose is crucial here. Epictetus taught that we must remember what is ours and what is not. Your time and attention are yours to direct in accordance with your virtue. You must guard them as you would guard the gates of your city. The second domain is control of your relationships and social world. Alex may begin to criticize your friends, your family, or your partner. They point out flaws, suggest ulterior motives, and sow seeds of doubt. Why do you hang out with them? They're not on your level, or your family doesn't really understand you, you know. This is a calculated move to isolate you, to become your sole source of validation and connection. Once you are isolated, you are more pliable. The Stoic, however, recognizes the importance of community and the diversity of human relationships. Seneca wrote letters on the importance of choosing good friends. But he also warned against letting one person become the arbiter of all your social worth. You must actively maintain your other connections, and view Alex's criticisms through the lens of their own need for control, not necessarily through the truth of the criticism. The third, and perhaps most insidious, is control of your self-perception and reality. This goes beyond gaslighting about specific events. This is an ongoing campaign to define who you are. Alex might tell you that you are too sensitive, too naive, too chaotic, or too rigid. They assign you a role that serves their narrative. If you are the emotional one, then their coldness is justified as rational. If you are the irresponsible one, then their control is reframed as necessary guidance. The Stoic must hold fast to their own self-examination. Marcus Aurelius began his meditations with a list of the virtues he learned from others. You, too, must know your own virtues and vices through honest reflection, not through the labels imposed by another. You must be the judge of your own character in romantic or close familial relationships. Control can extend to financial domination or coercive decision-making. Alex might control all the money, making you ask for every expense. They might make major life decisions: where to live, what job to take, without your meaningful input, presenting it as a fait accompli. This is the ultimate erosion of autonomy. The Stoic response is to reclaim your agency. However small the steps, it may begin with opening your own bank account, seeking independent advice, or simply stating, "I will not be making a decision under pressure. I need time to think." The controlling person often uses emotional blackmail as a tool. They threaten consequences: withdrawal of love, anger, self-harm, if you do not comply. If you really loved me, you would do this, or I'll be so disappointed if you don't. This preys on your empathy and your desire to avoid harm. The Stoic must remember that you are not responsible for another adult's emotional reactions. Only your own actions done with good intent. You cannot be held hostage by someone else's feelings. As Epictetus said, it is not he who reviles you or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting. You can choose not to be insulted, and you can choose not to be manipulated by threats. Confronting controlling behavior requires the Stoic virtue of justice to yourself. You must grant yourself the right to your own life, your own mind, and your own choices. This often means having a direct and firm conversation. Not to change Alex, which is outside your control, but to declare your own position. I will be making my own decisions about how I spend my time. I will be managing my own finances. I will be choosing my own friends. Then, you must be prepared for the backlash. The controlling person does not relinquish power easily. They may rage, they may weep, they may threaten. Your task is to remain calm, to hold the line, and to repeat your position like a broken record. This phase of the quiet conflict is the most exhausting. it is a direct assault on your sovereignty. But it is also the phase that, if navigated with courage and consistency, can lead to liberation. However, there is one final sign that can emerge when even control fails, when you have become so independent, so fortified, that they can no longer dominate you. This final sign is the most desperate and the most revealing of their true nature. The descent into pathological deceit and the willingness to burn everything down rather than admit defeat. This is where our story turns to its final, clarifying chapter. We arrive at the final, most desperate sign in our exploration of the quiet conflict. When charm has lost its power, empathy remains absent, manipulation is deflected, and control is rebuffed. A cornered individual may resort to a final, scorched earth tactic, pathological deceit, and destructive impulse. This is not the strategic lying of manipulation, but a more fundamental disintegration of truth. It is the willingness to dismantle reality itself, to burn down the shared world of facts, trust, and history simply to avoid accountability, to regain a sense of power, or to inflict pain upon the person who has finally said, "No more." In our narrative, Alex stands at this precipice. You are no longer a player in their game. You are a monument to their failure. Your peace, maintained through stoic discipline, is an insult to their chaos. The response is often a cascade of lies so brazen, so contradictory, and so pervasive that they seem almost gratuitous. They lie about things large and small, things that could be easily rarefied, things that serve no obvious purpose other than to assert, "My narrative is the only one that exists." Regardless of evidence, they may launch preemptive smear campaigns, spreading elaborate falsehoods about you to mutual friends, colleagues, or family. They recast the entire history of your relationship, painting themselves as the perpetual victim and you as the secret antagonist. This is the ultimate attempt at control, not of your actions, but of your very reputation and your place in the social ecosystem. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." A person engaged in such pervasive deceit is staining their own soul with chaos. They are fighting a war, not just against you, but against objective reality. Seneca warned of the man who, having committed a wrong, must then commit 1,000 more to conceal the first. This is that frantic, cascading energy. Recognizing this is not about catching them in a lie. It is about recognizing that you are now dealing with a person who has chosen fiction as their battlefield. Engaging on the factual details of their lies is a trap. It pulls you into the endless, exhausting maze they have built. So, what is the Stoic path through this final, destructive storm? It is the path of radical acceptance and unshakable finality. Your goal shifts entirely from understanding or reforming Alex to protecting your soul and your peace at all costs. First, you must practice the ultimate form of the dichotomy of control. You cannot control the lies they tell about you. You can control your integrity in this moment. Your refusal to engage in reciprocal mudslinging and the quiet, consistent truth you live by. You must become like a deep-rooted tree in a hurricane. The wind may howl and tear at your branches, your reputation, your social standing, but your core remains unbroken because it is grounded in the knowledge of your own virtue. As Epictetus said, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said, but answer, "He was ignorant of my other faults. Else he would not have mentioned these alone." Second, you enact definitive, non-negotiable boundaries. This often means cutting the last threads of contact. This is not an act of anger, but an act of surgery. You are removing a toxic presence from your life's ecosystem. You do not announce this as a dramatic ultimatum. You simply become a closed door. You stop responding. You block channels of communication. You refuse to attend gatherings where they will be present, or you attend and offer nothing more than polite, distant civility, as you would to a stranger. You become a ghost in their narrative, denying them the engagement, the fight, the drama, the reaction they crave. This final step is where you fully embrace the Stoic lesson that has run through all 5 signs. Your peace is your highest project. Every interaction, every agonized rumination, every attempt to set the record straight with someone who lives in a different record is a theft from that project. You must now invest your energy not in the past conflict, but in the future you are building without that weight. This journey, from recognizing superficial charm to walking away from pathological deceit, is ultimately one of profound self. It is the application of ancient wisdom to modern, quiet battles. The Stoics were not teaching us to detect evil for its own sake, but to cultivate a self so grounded in virtue and reason that it becomes impervious to these corrosive forces. You learn to spot the signs, not to judge the world, but to navigate it with wisdom and preserve your capacity for joy, for trust, and for genuine connection with those who are capable of reciprocity. As our story concludes, remember that the opposite of a toxic person is not merely a safe person, but a free person. You have used Stoic principles as a lens to see clearly, as a shield to protect your mind, and as a guide to reclaim your autonomy. The quiet conflict ends not when the other person changes, but when you decide your peace is no longer negotiable currency. You withdraw from the market altogether. Take the lessons of these 5 signs: the charm, the empathy deficit, the manipulation, the control, the deceit, and let them arm you with discernment, not bitterness. Let them open space in your life for relationships that are built on mutual respect, shared vulnerability, and truthful connection. Tend to your own garden, your inner citadel, for there, in the quiet you have fiercely protected, grows the only peace that is truly yours, and that no one can ever disturb. Thank you for walking this path of understanding with Sleep Story Studio. May you go forward with clarity, courage, and an unshakable commitment to your own tranquil, virtuous life.